there are 3 Rebels in the Honda lineup. There's the Rebel 300 for beginners. There's this bike, the Rebel 500, and now they have the Rebel 1100. I do like the looks of this bike. This one has a really sweet matte white finish. They have it in all black too, but this matte white has grown on me. It looks pretty sharp, if you ask me. And overall, this has got Honda's legendary fit and finish, right? It is, at this price point, it is really well finished. Here, thumbs up the motor. 500cc parallel twin. I'm a big fan of parallel twins. This one is a good one. Sounds great, revs freely. Yeah, so that ain't bad. That ain't half bad. It's got some nice pep. Again, this is a light motorcycle. This is just over 400 pounds, so 45 horsepower or so plus 400 pounds, and a pretty agile chassis. Ends up with a really fun ride, right? This is not sport bike responsive, but it is very linear and very predictable. You can lean this thing over and it'll handle a series of bends quite nicely. I've actually have not touched down a body part. I haven't touched down a foot peg. I haven't touched down an exhaust pipe. I haven't touched down anything yet on this bike, and I've ridden it with some brio. And at this point, I would feel pretty confident taking this on a Sunday ride, on a Sunday scratch with friends, you know. Thumbs up for the transmission. 6 speeds, really smooth shifting, typical Honda clutching transmission. Likewise, the brakes are nice. You have Nissan calipers front and rear. There is a single disc up front and a single disc in the rear, and braking is solid and linear and strong 95% of the time. 2-finger braking is sufficient. There will be times where you're coming from a stop at a high speed or emergency brake, or you might want to switch to 3 fingers. The seating position is quite nice, actually. Upper body, I am 5'8" with a 30-inch inseam. My upper body is more or less upright, and the reach of the bars is comfortable. My arms are not down. I'm not reaching down for clip-ons, but they're also not ape hangers. They're kind of it's a really nice place to ride, actually. And the upper body, if you're really going at it a little bit, or if you really want to play around a little bit, you can lean into the wind, and your upper body and your arms are in a really good position to handle the bike through a set of twisties. Now, below the hips, because this is a short cruiser with a 27.2 inch seat height, my thighs are pretty much going out 90 degrees from my upper body, as if I'm sitting in a chair. And then, interestingly, from my knees to my feet, I'm not kicked out, you know, like feet forward cruiser, but my knees are kind of, my feet are kind of tucked in. They fall in. The tips of my toes are just below my knees, so my heel is backwards a little bit. So it's a oddly sporty riding position. I mean, I could put my heels on the foot pegs like I am now, and my knees are bent at about a 90-degree angle. But if I'm on the balls of my feet, I am in a position that allows me to weight the foot pegs, that allows me to hit a series of bends using body language to help steer into the turns and so on. So it's a really nice compromise between cruising and riding for a little more sport. Again, this is no sport bike, this is no sport tour, but for a cruiser, this is surprisingly sporty. I was about 75 miles into the trip and I was like, oh man, this seat is only good for about 75 miles. But then I realized something. There's something funky happening with the suspension. I don't know exactly what's happening, but it feels as if there's too much compression damping. So that is, if you're on a road, even a brand new paved road, a brand new paved road will have little imperfections and little ripples, and the suspension's job is to smooth those out. This bike, and I was on a lot of like brand new paved roads, right? This bike was having a hard time with those ripples. So what was happening was both the front end and the rear end would kind of like jiggle vertically as I was going over those roads at cruising speeds. And I think that vertical vibration over time got me, started to wear on me. So by the time I was 75 miles in, I was thinking, oh, this seat is so if you want to go for big trips on this thing, you have to work on the seat. But I'm changing my mind. I'm not sure if it's the seat. I think it might be the suspension. If you're buying this just to cruise and do 50 miles in a day or just get around town and stuff like that, you could probably live with this suspension. You'd probably be fine with it. But if your ambition is weekends away, weeks away, months away, I think this suspension will need some consideration. Modifying the suspension will need some consideration. The other thing I do need to give a thumbs down to is this dashboard. Oh my goodness. Honda. You did this with the CB1000R that I rode. And I think you think it's cool with this inverted display, which is basically an LCD display where the numbers and letters are white and the background is black. But to be honest, it stinks. It's a parlor trick that I actually learned when I was in grade school. I would open up calculators and there was a thin polarizing film that in front of the display, that if you had it one way, it would be your standard black text on white, and if you flipped it the other way, it was white text on black, just like this. Really simple parlor trick, but the problem is half the time I can't see it. Literally half the time I can't see it. Right now the sun is shining at me and there's so much glare in this display that it's all but useless to me right now. And because it's not really black on white, or it's really not white text on black, it's like kind of gray text on kind of gray background. The contrast is really low and it's really hard to see. And honestly, all attempts to be cool are destroyed once you take a look at this giant dark black bezel around it. Kind of looks like an iPhone 3 or something like that. It's a super mega giant bezel. So again, who is this bike for? It's for beginners, you know, people who are just learning. It's funny because the specs of this bike are pretty darn close to my first bike, a 1988 Honda Hawk GT. That bike weighed about 400 pounds, 650cc parallel twin, made about 45 horsepower, and these numbers are pretty much identical. So that's a good starting point for a beginner rider. But again, it's also a decent starting point for someone who is of shorter inseam and is looking for a bike bigger than the 250 that they started on, or the 300 they started on. There's no 500cc cruisers in this price range. It's like everyone vacated. Everyone left the premises. Suzuki has a 650. I forget the name of it. The Suzuki Marauder, the Marauder, Intruder, the Magruder. I forget what it is. That's a 650 thumper, but it's got that 80s style Japanese cruiser look to it, and it's just not appealing to me. And I think it's pretty much an old design at this point. There is a Kawasaki Vulcan S, I believe. That's more expensive. There is a Yamaha Bolt, which is a couple $1,000s more expensive as well. So those kind of don't, they're out of the price range, right? So you can't really compete. There's nothing from the European manufacturers. The cheapest Harley Davidson Sportster is more expensive. So in a lot of ways, this bike is a class of one, and it's good. Maybe it's so good that everyone else just gave up and said, we can't compete. And that's a 10-minute test of the Honda Rebel 500. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the road.